At the peak of his powers, Earvin "Magic" Johnson was the most electric human being professional basketball had ever witnessed. 5 championships. 3 MVP trophies. A smile so wide and so warm it could light the darkest arena in America from the inside out. In November 1991, when Magic Johnson was diagnosed with HIV, he stood before a room full of cameras and told the world something that, in that era, most people quietly translated as a death notice. The most invincible man in sports had just revealed he was carrying what millions believed to be a guaranteed ending. People searched for years afterward, still search today, asking when was Magic Johnson diagnosed with HIV, because that press conference didn't feel like news. It felt like a funeral held in real time for someone still standing. And the detail that made the silence in that room so physically heavy, so unbearable, was this. He was smiling. Not from ignorance. Not from performance. He was smiling because Earvin Johnson had spent his entire life learning to smile hardest precisely when the ground beneath him was collapsing. There is an irony in Magic Johnson's story that hurts too much to be coincidence. The child who grew up in Lansing, Michigan, surrounded by the specific poverty that teaches you to want without expecting. A poverty not of violence, but of quiet, grinding limitation, where the refrigerator sometimes communicated in silences louder than any argument. The teenager who discovered that a basketball court was the only room in the world where his enormous body and enormous heart were not too much, but exactly enough. The icon who built an identity so radiant, so genuinely joyful, that an entire generation forgot joy could be constructed from pain. All of that, so that life would arrive at the height of his reign, at 32 years old, at the precise moment when legends are supposed to be untouchable, and begin dismantling everything from the inside. How does a boy from a working-class family in industrial Lansing become the living definition of basketball soul? What year was Magic Johnson drafted, and what was really hiding behind the smile that accompanied every answer he ever gave? What happens when the man who made everyone else feel invincible is forced to confront his own fragility, live, on camera, in front of the entire watching world? And what does it cost to survive that moment? To not just endure it, but transform it into something that outlasts the sport itself. To understand all of that, we need to go back to the beginning. To Lansing, Michigan, to the autumn of 1959, and to a boy who learned, in the gentlest but most permanent way possible, that love is something you earn through performance, through brightness, through becoming a reason for the people around you to stop worrying, even for just a moment. Earvin Johnson, Jr. was born on August 14, 1959, in Lansing, Michigan, the fourth of 7 children born to Earvin Johnson, Sr. and Christine Johnson. His father worked multiple jobs simultaneously, including a line position at General Motors and a second shift hauling garbage. A man whose relationship with rest was essentially non-existent. His mother, Christine, was a school cafeteria worker with a faith as structural as concrete and a warmth that held the household together when finances made the walls feel dangerously thin. Lansing in the late 1960s was not a city of softness. It was an industrial landscape of factories and flat winter skies, a place where ambition was respected but kept quiet, where dreaming too loudly was considered something close to rudeness. The Johnson family home on Middle Street was full of people and noise and love, but it was never full of money. His father, Earvin Sr., was not a cold man, but he was an exhausted one. Working double shifts, sometimes triple, meant that emotional presence was the one resource the household consistently ran short on. The lesson young Earvin absorbed, without anyone intending to teach it, was a dangerous one. The way to matter to someone who is tired and stretched and carrying too much is to make yourself useful, to make yourself bright, to never be a burden, to smile even when the truth is more complicated than a smile can hold. In school, Earvin was outsized in every direction, physically large for his age and emotionally enormous in a way that could have been crushing if the court had not existed. He was a child who felt things in volumes that made ordinary social settings feel like ill-fitting clothes. Years later, he would confess with a directness that still carries weight, "Growing up, I felt like I had to earn my place in every room I walked into. The court was the only place I didn't have to earn it. I just belonged there." At 13, a moment arrived that felt like demolition and turned out to be construction. Placed under the informal mentorship of a local journalist and basketball enthusiast named Fred Stabley Jr., who would later gift him the nickname Magic after watching him record 36 points, 18 rebounds, and 16 assists in a single high school game, young Earvin began to understand that his gift was not just physical. It was architectural. He could see the game 3 movements ahead, like a chess player who also happened to be the most athletically gifted piece on the board. And when Earvin Johnson first ran a full court with real defenders, real pressure, real consequence, something remarkable happened. The social anxiety, the compulsive brightness performed for exhausted adults, the need to earn his place, all of it dissolved. On the court, he was not managing anyone's emotions. The court had its own language, and he had been born fluent. It was not talent yet. It was recognition. The silent, absolute certainty of having found the one place where the smile was not strategy, where it was simply, finally, true. In 1979, Magic Johnson was drafted first overall by the Los Angeles Lakers. People still search what year was Magic Johnson drafted, because that selection feels less like a sports transaction and more like the universe correcting an imbalance, placing the right soul in the right city at the right impossible moment. He was 19 years old. He arrived in Los Angeles with a laugh that filled corridors and a confidence that some mistook for arrogance until they watched him play and understood it was simply accuracy. He knew exactly what he was. The question was whether the world was ready for it. The Lakers were not a simple environment for a teenager from Lansing. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the greatest center in the history of the sport, was already there, already legendary, already operating at a frequency of quiet, intellectual intensity that could not have been more different from Magic's explosive warmth. The early tension between Kareem and Magic was real, documented, and quietly fascinating. 2 championship architectures that spoke completely different emotional languages forced to share the same blueprint. Kareem was the cathedral. Magic was the congregation that finally filled it. Together, they became something neither could have been alone. In his rookie year, Magic Johnson did not win Rookie of the Year, a fact that surprises people who search his early career today. He lost that award to Larry Bird. But what he did win was a championship, and what he did in Game 6 of the 1980 NBA Finals remains one of the most audacious single performances in sports history. Kareem was injured. Magic, a point guard, started at center, played all 5 positions across 47 minutes, and finished with 42 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists. He was 20 years old. He was not supposed to be able to do that. Nobody was supposed to be able to do that. The rivalry with Larry Bird defined an era, but what people discuss now, searching LeBron and Magic Johnson comparisons with a hunger that speaks to something deeper than statistics, is the question of legacy versus longevity. Magic compressed the impossible into 13 seasons. He didn't need more time. He needed exactly that much. And he used every second of it with a completeness that still feels almost offensive to the concept of limitation. During those Showtime Lakers years, Magic moved through Los Angeles like he had been born specifically for its light. He became close with Michael Jackson, a friendship between 2 men who understood, at a cellular level, what it meant to perform joy for an entire world while navigating private complexities that the world was never invited to witness. Magic Johnson and Michael Jackson together were not just famous friends. They were a specific kind of lonely that only exists at that altitude, where everyone wants something from you and almost nobody simply wants you. Then came November 7th, 1991. Magic Johnson stood before the cameras and announced his HIV diagnosis to a world that went completely, collectively still. He was 32 years old. How old was Magic Johnson when he retired? 32. The number feels wrong every time. A man at the absolute summit of his athletic existence, forced to step away not by defeat, but by a diagnosis that carried, in 1991, the specific cultural weight of a death sentence. The questions that followed were not always kind. The commentary was not always fair. The Pistons' defensive commentary about his physicality, the whispers about his personal life, the cruelty that hides inside public curiosity, all of it arrived simultaneously. But Magic Johnson did not disappear. He did something that nobody anticipated and that the sports world had no framework to process. he thrived. While others managed his obituary in advance, he was building a business empire that would eventually make his financial achievements eclipse even his athletic ones. The Magic Johnson Theaters, his network of movie theaters built deliberately in underserved black communities across America, became symbols of something profound. He was not just bringing entertainment to neighborhoods that major chains had abandoned. He was making an argument in brick and mortar and economics that these communities deserved investment, dignity, and presence. The Donald Sterling saga brought Magic back into painful public conversation years later. Sterling, the disgraced former owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, made comments that were as revealing as they were vile, and Magic Johnson's name was central to them. What that moment exposed was how Magic had always occupied a complicated space in white America's imagination, celebrated as an athlete, respected as a businessman, but still subject to the specific diminishments that fame cannot fully shield against. He handled it with a grace that was, by that point, simply characteristic. Today, Magic Johnson stands at 65 years old, more than 3 decades past a diagnosis that was supposed to end him. Still constructing, still investing, still filling rooms with that specific quality of presence that makes people feel inexplicably that things might be all right. The HIV did not take him. The retirement did not diminish him. The controversies did not define him. Every search that brings someone to his name today, whether they are looking for his draft year or his diagnosis or his friendship with Michael Jackson or his theaters, leads them eventually to the same place. A boy from Lansing who learned to smile through pain, and then spent 65 years teaching the rest of us that the smile, if it survives enough, eventually becomes real. What lesson do you take from Magic Johnson's story? How many times have you chosen brightness when the honest thing would have been to collapse? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories of those who transformed their deepest wounds into their most enduring legacies. Because in the end, as Magic himself proved, the most revolutionary thing a broken person can do is refuse, with a smile, to stay broken.